This is Season 4, Episode 8 of Mastering the RPG, a tabletop RPG podcast all about upping your game. Doesn't matter if you're a game master or a player, you'll find advice, ideas, and some strong opinions. Our episode tonight is Gamehole Con Recap, or Missing New Friends Already. Hey everyone, welcome again to Mastering the RPG, a tabletop RPG podcast, like I said. It's all about new ideas, cool stuff, and tonight we're doing Creature Corner, so that'll be fun. I'm Carl with my co-hosts Eric and Chris, and you can find all information about the show at masteringtherepg.com. Send us some email at feedback and questions at gamemaster@masteringtherepg.com, and we look forward to hearing from you. So, gentlemen, how are you doing this fine day?
I'm doing great. I've been doing my housework, and now I'm going to do my brain work.
The complete package. Yeah, I'm doing good. I mean, games are going good. I think we've had some... I think like all games just recently feel like there's been a lot of scheduling problems in like every game that I'm in or, in my running one. So I think it's starting to get back to normal, Carl, I think in your game, we're kind of reaching the end. This is the end zone kind of portion, right?
You're definitely in the end game.
Like the final movie. We're in the third movie, I feel like, right?
Yeah. Third act of the third movie.
Yeah. Third act. Okay. Yeah. I mean, we're like deep into Legendary. And then in my game, things are progressing. They still haven't kind of got out of the more railroaded portion, which I wanted to kind of get them into like seasons plus a little bit to like have a real strong foundation before opening it up. So that should be really exciting. That's when it's really going to be the most interesting for new players. Some of the people in my game are new players, so yeah.
Very cool. Me, we've been having a good time with the game. I've been having a little bit of a vapor lock on really how to bring you guys into the end game and what's going to happen, and how so that's why I stopped it short the last time we played. We had probably had another 30 minutes, 40 minutes we could have gone, and it was like, nope, you guys landfall, and that's it. We're not doing anything else. I gotta work on that. So, so I have to really do some good prepping coming up, that I haven't had to do recently because I had so much of the world already gears in motion, and now it's the last phase of it all. So, very cool. Definitely enjoying that, and of course, just trying to get back into the world after Gamehole Con, obviously. And so, that's amazingly enough what we'll be talking about tonight. But first, we have a segment that we've done once before that's called the Creature Corner. Tonight, Eric's going to lead us through a interesting. It's not a thing; it's a set of things. So, Eric, why don't
it's a weird one.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Eric, why don't you take us away?
Yeah, it is a weird one. I think for my first one especially, this is a weird one because it's just so broad. It's not really as specific as the other one that we did and what we were thinking we were doing. But anyways, what is it? I'm tackling the Hive mind insectoid. And I really believe this could almost be a full episode. Like there's definitely enough here because it is kind of just a concept of a thing, but there's enough here to kind of pick at. So what do I mean by that? Well, the hive mind insectoid, I believe, was first introduced in speculative fiction in James H. Schmidt's 1950 Second Night of Summer. They're a very broad creature type, like I said. The hive mind insects, they're usable, and they're pretty much found in every genre. Like if we just kind of look at some of the main tabletop ones, we have the Formians of D&D, which were kind of a 3E, 2E creature type. The Tyranids of Warhammer 40K, and the I can never pronounce these correctly. Maybe Chris can help me here. The Zitix of Rifts. I can never pronounce them. They're like the kind of insectoid, obviously hive mind invaders in Rifts. The cool thing about them is that they kind of both feel completely alien and also completely familiar at the same time. Like it's a weird, I'm spacing out a little bit. It's just a weird spread of like a lot of things about them. Obviously we have insects and ants and bees, but they're also just like when they become more like full creatures and they're sentient or whatever, they just are so alien, right? Because they're kind of the most alien things, some of the most alien things we have on Earth as far as the thinking goes. Culturally, they can really range all the way from being like super spiritualist and benign to kind of xenophobic isolationists, right? They just they just have their land and anything else. Nobody can go into their land, right? But they don't bother other people. All the way to like the full-on relentless devouring conquerors, like swarms just devouring everything in their path. So like I said, there's such a big stretch. Kind of when you want to use them in your game, unless you take you could take something that's already exists, or you can make them on your own. I think there's some main traits that really define them. The one is, like I said before, there's this alien intelligence, and even though we are kind of basing them off of Earth animals, they still have a very alien way of thinking, right? From us, they can be. So when you think about having them have completely fundamentally differences in their morals and their perception of their world, that's really important because you want to make them seem very distinct from other types of creatures in your game, right? Even if they're more benign, you can give them like odd things to care about or prioritize, or like weird quirks, right? Like they might just really be into. There's a book series that I've read where they're really into like sculpting, and they use music, but it's just totally different than like the way we would sculpt, right? Like they look at art completely differently, or music completely differently, or they have like weird quirks of collecting things or whatever. Like you can give them just totally off the wall things, and you don't really have to even justify it because they have this alien intelligence. Obviously, another one of the big traits is a hive mind. So a hive mind is where, you have kind of one controlling mind, right? One controlling personality, one controlling a being that kind of controls a horde of underlings, and where they don't have individual personalities usually, right? So we're talking about like drones and individuals' sentience paired with that single ruling consciousness. Usually it's like a queen. Sometimes you can have like a queen with kind of lesser sentience that kind of act as commanders or controllers that kind of still do her will or still do their will, right? But they're still beholden to the main consciousness, but you can kind of play with that and have lesser versions. Usually the hive mind is either psychic, but you can also have like smell-based pheromone communication. Those are the most populars. But there's other ways too you could kind of justify it, but definitely just leaning on psychic or kind of pheromone-based smell, right? It's usually the most common. You could also kind of do, instead of like psychic, it's maybe like sound, right? There's definitely, I think the Mass Effect one, there was one in Mass Effect that I believe was sound. Another of the main traits is subtypes. I think a lot of our creatures have subtypes, like when we talk about, goblins or something. But in the case of these, like insectoids, especially hive-minded ones, it's really important to have side types that are super distinct, right? And have different stat blocks that have very, very specific roles. Like if you think about just, very basically we have like soldiers and workers and guards, right? And they'll look differently and function very differently, but they'll always have some similarities, but you can really play around with stat blocks with these and have very different ones, right? Where workers are just going to be not as dangerous, but there's going to be a lot of them, where the soldiers are going to be much bigger, much more aggressive, have much more like things going for them and so on. Finally, I think one of the other main traits is biological power or like biological superiority. Even in science fiction games, you really want to lean into this, where they might have like some type of technology or technology-looking things, but strong carapaces, natural armor, vicious natural weapons, scent-based attacks, psychic powers, mobility like burrowing or flying, things like acid, these type of biological-leaning things is usually super important. And if you're in a science fiction game, they could have things where they're growing their ships. It's kind of like if you think of what's that movie that's very satirical with bugs. Do you guys remember spacing out? Yeah, Starship Troopers. Thank you. Right, those things were interstellar species that kind of conquered, and they use biological superiority. So those are the kind of main traits. If you guys have any suggestions, otherwise I'm just kind of keep going. as far as utilizing them kind of the best in your campaign, one of the best ways I found that these are useful for is almost as like natural barriers in the world. So like a mountain range, right? Where when you want to like keep areas of words, you keep your world a little bit more like, especially as game masters, we want the sense that the world is big, but obviously for our own sanity, often we want to find ways to constrain players, right? Somewhat, like not constrain them into a single place, but if we're writing it, right, Carl, like with our game that we play now, like you have us having unknown areas and the sea is very dangerous, right? Like there's kind of some natural constraints that like make us so we just can't go everywhere, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Carl.
No, I think it's a good point. I mean, they provide natural kind of huge. It could be like a huge barrier in the sense of it's such a large group of them that you simply can't go around, right? You have to.
Yeah, you can't go around them.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's really useful for that. And it's cool because maybe when the party is stronger later on, then there's something like, oh, how do we get through there? Or how do we deal with them? Or maybe now we can fight them. So there is this kind of like permeability to it where it's as powerful as you want to make it as a game master. So you can use it as just a complete no-go zone, but you can also use it as, well, later on, then there's some flexibility with you able to get through. And it can also be like, instead of just combat, you could do this. When we talk about Savage Worlds, these can be like dramatic tasks or very narrative kind of scenes, where they're getting through this area where it's not really like, constantly combating them. It's more of just like a big narrative kind of a session, right, to get through. Go on, Chris.
In the game World of Warcraft, the old video game, I guess some people still play, but there was an area, I can't remember, it was in the southwest of the map, and it was all bugs, and it definitely was a barrier because you had to be quite high level to actually survive in any of the important parts of that area. And that was just exactly how it was. It was, you can kind of visit the perimeter, but you'd probably die and you'll come back later when you're high level.
Yeah, so this kind of variable barrier. Cool. Yeah, I played World of Warcraft, but I don't remember. I played it in the beginning, so I don't remember that at all. That's very cool. So another thing, when you think about utilizing them in your campaign, so if you're making them or even just taking stat blocks, you want them to act very differently as you normally kind of run monsters, right? They're very similar to undead in that way, where it should feel unrelenting. Dealing with these large swarm of insects that, if they're drones, right, they never give up. They're not going to rout unless they're told to. They don't take prisoners. You can't take them prisoner. Like, prisoners don't matter, right? They're kind of fanatics to the very extreme, and they will do anything to protect either their leader or their leaders if there's kind of, sub-commanders, right? So I think leaning into that can be like a really cool thing and really give... When we want players to fight different types of enemies or different like civilizations or different areas, right? You want to make them feel distinct, so lean into that kind of like unrelenting, overwhelming kind of feeling.
And if you're doing theater of the mind, they can just be places that you're facing a foe, but they're suddenly on your peripheral, or they're kind of moving around you, and you really don't have one single target versus. Usually when people think about a map in front of them, you've got the tokens, and you're going to have 100 tokens for your hive. No, you're not. You're really going to talk about how this is just sort of, it's a mass of things you're dealing with that you need to think about from a combat different than I just find a foe and I swat the foe. I have multiple foes all around me who can flank me very easily. So you got to think about that from a strategy standpoint.
And then if you wanted to have more of like a normal combat, like have them break into the hive and then they're fighting like the guards, right? And the queen, like that would be then like kind of the normal thing. But now that's not to say that you can't have diplomacy with them. I think diplomacy can be extremely interesting and extremely complex with them, because when you're dealing with these underlings, there's no diplomacy at all, right? But then you can have very interesting dealings with the either commanders or the kind of single consciousness, right? That can have different distinctive personalities and weird personalities. And then, instead of just kind of being like, again, you want to make them have different morals. So when you're normally doing diplomacy, it's more about like mutual benefit of like, okay, what can I offer you and what can you offer me? And that's where those things would usually deal with parties, right? Is kind of like, how can they help me? It's not usually like leaning on morals or leaning on what their morals are, right? don't go by the normal party morals or logic. You can also have different factions of these things, right? It doesn't have to be a monolith. You can have different types of hives, and each of those can kind of have maybe a different culture, or the single intelligence has different personalities in different ways, right? And then, so the cool thing there is that instead of, kind of like a normal intrigue game, but instead of like dealing with a ball, you're dealing with these giant wilderness areas where you're, instead of spying in urban areas, you're kind of leveraging hives against each other, or doing like scouting in the wilderness and trying to get into the hives to get information about what they're doing. And also just the act of kind of figuring out what the different hives cultures are can be a big part of the gameplay. And that can really like have the players, okay, I guess, none of them are really good, but we'll go with this one that is kind of the least murderous or the least consuming, right? Look at the people least as food or something. We can be working with them the most. Finally, they're also an excellent way, and we've talked about this in some our other episodes. When we talked about like nemesis and dealing with like villains, and then having the villain kind of work with you, right, at times to kind of go against a bigger foe. These are the big foe, right? You can introduce these kind of into a campaign, or they can start invading into a campaign, and then it can be an interesting way to like have, well, we were fighting this necromancer, or we were fighting this like evil wizard or whatever, but now there's this, humongous horde of just insects that just want to consume that look at us all as food. So now we have to work together with the villain, right? They're just a really good way to kind of unify all the disparate factions that maybe existed before against this kind of overwhelming foe. So yeah, I just love them, and they're so flexible. I don't know, Chris, have you ever used them or played with them before?
Yes, I like them. I have them in two of my settings. I have them in a Feywild setting that was not a Feywild setting, a Shadowfell setting, where there's a Shadowfell bug, which is like even more like non-humane because it has that alien intelligence plus it's Shadowfell gloom added on top of it. And then another one that's very close to Starship Troopers in this other world, and they're terraforming it. So it's like I like it because I can use it when the players have sort of developed a pattern that they meet people, persuade, talk their way into something, et cetera, and they've done that 3 times, and then now bugs, and that none of that works anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to have a whole different toolbox, right, with dealing with these alien hive minds. So yeah, I don't know, Carl. Any idea? I mean, I know you haven't played with them before, but does this give you an inspiration or any ideas?
Well, it does. I mean, it's interesting that you could, going back to the barrier side, they could be the great unknown, right? They could be the thing that's been holding your civilization back from exploring the great unknown, and now this kind of wall, winter is coming kind of thing, right? That's been holding them back for generations. Now they've fallen back. There's less of these things coming and pushing against the wall, and the bugs are moving away. Now, what are you going to go in? Are you going to explore? Are you going to try to figure out what's left with this? Now that the hives have withdrawn, and why did they withdraw, and what's going on? It could turn that into a bunch of intrigue, because they literally were this barrier to you exploring going forward.
Okay, so yeah, as kind of the whole crux of the narrative, you're saying, like, as a post-apocalypse, like they were the apocalypse, and then for whatever reason, either they were receding or there's a new technology or something. Yeah, that's interesting, for sure.
Very cool. All right, hey, Eric, thank you very much. That was a very nice treatise on hive mind. If anybody's anybody else kind of like scratching their skin going, oh, bugs, oh, yeah, oh, we're talking about bugs. Anyway.
They could look, you could make them hive mind bunnies, right? Like, as long as just bunnies with, I don't know, extra ears and feet or something. I don't know. They could be furry, that's all I'm saying.
That's true. Well, like you said, you compared them to undead, right? Undead could be that same sort of like, that same sort of thing, controlled by one kind of mind that's not completely lost, right? So, yeah, cool. All right, awesome. So what do you say we go ahead and jump into the main topic? Hey, everyone. Welcome to the main topic. Today we're talking about sort of our the fun or the trials and tribulations of going to Gamehole Con. Chris and I attended, and Eric's going to walk us through some questions. These came from a listener, John, who wrote us a nice email that's asked us a bunch of questions about how the convention went and that sort of thing. And so we're going to actually talk about that and walk through those questions. And thank you, John, for kind of triggering this thought experiment that we've got going. So I'll take it away, Eric.
Yeah, so like I said, I a lot of this is from John's email. I added some stuff too and kind of moved stuff around. But yeah, thanks, John. Okay, number one, I think we were going to do this anyways. So John had like similar questions to me as well. But number one, easy. How was Gamehole Con, Carl? How was it just overall?
Oh, it was fantastic. It was so much fun. It's such a different experience than like a convention like Gen Con. It's just all gaming, very personal. You know, you see the same people over and over again. It's a relatively big convention for the size for the gaming. There's actually a lot of people who go. So it was just a blast. I drank way too much coffee because they had a GM, like a little GM hangout, and they had free coffee. And so whenever I had time, it's like, okay, I'll just have a cup of coffee and sit and relax and take her easy. And so another cup of coffee. So I was hopped up on coffee most of the time. But yeah, it was a fantastic time. It's a really great convention, well run. You can buy a ticket and 2 seconds later show the ticket to your game master on your phone versus some other conventions where you have to worry about paper tickets and stuff like that. So it's really well run as well. So fantastic.
That's interesting. I guess we didn't even touch on that in the last one. I guess is that you think all these new conventions are kind of going this route probably, or is there some of them kind of slow to change?
I think most would be going that route at some point. I'm not sure if Gamehole Con's unique, but I know last time I was Gen Con, it was such a pain. They've only got so many electronic tickets, and they don't have everybody's got electronic tickets. Some people have paper tickets. It was a nightmare. But Gamehole Con was much better in that regard. You got your ticket, and you could just show it on your phone to the game master to show them that you were there. Not that people would generally ask, but you're supposed to. So anyway,
okay.
I definitely didn't remember to ask a single time.
Well, yeah, Chris, how was it for you?
It was good. It's my favorite convention for playing games. Like Carl said, it's very personal. Like I feel like I can interact with people, play games with people, talk to people without it being a pomp and circumstance, a ceremony, pay $100 to wait in a line, any of that stuff. It feels like it's made by gamers for gamers, and everything seems to be really centric around that, and it feels like a real good place to be.
Nice. Was there anybody you enjoyed meeting in person?
I got to meet Rick Meintz, who was the owner or co-owner of Chaosium, but I didn't know who it was at the time. I just thought it was somebody's friend, Rick. I was like, oh yeah, hi. Hey, hello, Rick. How's it going? Like, okay, we'll talk about whatever. But and later on, I looked up who he was because I was like, that sounds kind of familiar.
Remind us of what Chaosium does.
Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah. Okay.
And then basic role playing, and then there's some other stuff. But yeah, I looked him up later, and I was like, oh, that's who that was. And his demeanor was probably what I would want in a president of a company or whatever. Very confident and knowledgeable person. So that was pretty cool to meet him.
Nice.
I had
anybody else or?
Oh, quite cool.
Oh, I was just going to say, if I had a lot of people I got a good chance to meet and interact with, which was fantastic, primarily from the Savage community because they had there's the Savage Alliance out of kind of Wisconsin, and the Savage Alliance sort of ran the convention, and they had a whole room just for Savage Worlds. So that room, there was always people from the game sphere of the Savage Worlds universe in there. And so had a chance to meet Scott Woodard, whose recent credits are Pine Box Middle School, Carl Kieser. For just a few minutes, we had a talk, and he talked about how people say there's too many Carls running around now. So there, so I thought that was kind of funny. Christian Serrano, Savage Eberron, Peg Team was there, like Jody was there, Tracy Sizemore was there. So there's a lot of people had a chance to kind of interact with, and and thank people you don't get I talked to Paul Vincent, who's the author of Street Wolves. We had a lot of nice conversations online, and then there he was in person, face to face. And now I know why he calls his company Table Cat Games, because he's really good. He's a cat person. He loves cats. So, it was so it was kind of fun. It was just fun to be able to, chat with people and get to know them more. And I actually was recognized one time by somebody who came up to me and said, "Hey, I like your show. Are you Carl?" And I said, "Yeah." And then we talked a lot about Tabletop Tango. So asked him some questions and asked him what he liked. What did he like, one content or another content? And he was like, "I love all content." I was like, "All right, okay, good. We can keep doing all content."
All right.
Solve the problem right there. So that was fantastic to meet people and really the folks that I've been interacting with in Savage Worlds, actually getting a chance to talk to them. Like I got to talk to Chris Landauer again. I hadn't talked to him in a while, so it was great, fantastic.
All right, nice. I think that the sense of community sometimes is hard when we've transitioned so much to digital, on the computer, and there is still something that's missing when you're kind of seeing everybody in one place, right? People, the creators and the fans. It sounds very rewarding. Okay, well, let's cut to the quick a little bit. And how did your games go, Carl? I mean, you had, I think 3 games, right?
4. I had 4.
You had 3 kind of. Oh, you had 4. Okay.
I had 4.
Oh, because you had your zombies. You did your zombies.
I had the Helix. I had the Helix Nebula situation. I had Dragonlance. I had Is This Another Bug Hunt? And then Zombies Black Friday. So I did 4 separate games. Most people say that's a crazy thing to do, but I did 4 of them, and they went really well. The Helix Nebula situation, the folks I had playing that game, there was a couple of newer players, but they were just like, they just got stuff done. And they got done a half hour early because, maybe 40 minutes early, because they just like, we should do this. Oh yeah, what about this? Oh, we can print a spray can on the 3D printer. Yeah, let's go do that. And they just like, really, really super smart. Is This Just Another Bug Hunt? That had all experienced players. Savage Worlds players. These are all Savage Worlds games. So I had very experienced players, and those guys were just a joy to play with because you weren't. I love teaching people the rules, new people the rules, but there's something fun about people who know it as well, and they're like doing tests, they're doing support, and they're wild attacking when it makes sense to wild attack, and they just kind of know things, and it's kind of fun, to just have all the rules come into play without having to spoon feed, and so they were really good, and then of course I had. Chris was in my Dragonlance game, so that was an absolute fantastic time with Scott. Woodard was in it as well, and that went really well. It's kind of linear. It doesn't have to be linear, but almost anybody who plays it linear. They go room to room to room, but you don't have to. You could go anywhere you wanted to, really. But it works out well that way anyway.
So they survived? Chris survived to the end?
They survived. They survived. They succeeded. Every group I had succeeded.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They ultimately were successful because my events are designed to allow people to be successful unless you really,
well, the zombie one, I feel like the zombie one's probably the most deadly, right?
Yeah, and that's designed to kill people, and then you get a new character, and that had Chris Landauer and Kristen Serrano were in that game, and they were, again, they know the game, and so they're wild attacking. They're using things for, I'll get this as a weapon, I'll take this. And it's the first group who ever got to the security office. And once they're at the security office, they were turning alarms on so the zombies couldn't hear them anymore, and they were just doing all sorts of stuff. So they succeeded as well without actually losing a character. The one kept getting kept getting beat on constantly and having to be healed, but in the end they survived. So it was fantastic. I really thought everything went really
Chris. Well. How are your games went?
Mine went well. I also did 4, and it's also probably not advised. And not only running 4, but running 4 different ones. It's probably way better to run a couple times, different time slots. And it also gets you to meet more people there because, people are unlikely to play the same game twice, so guaranteed. But if somebody really wants to play with you, they'll play in all 4 of your games, and then you're meeting less. But all mine went great. I don't think I had any big issues. Most of the issues I had were logistic. Like, I was in a different room every time. I was in the Savage Worlds room once, the atrium once, the vendor hall once, which had a little area for games, and then the miniatures room, which had the adult quote unquote games, because I had one of mine was listed as 18 plus for no reason other than it was more gory.
Okay.
But I mean, they all went fantastic. I got to meet. I had never played a game with Chris Landauer also, which I got to do. I don't even think I had played with Scott Woodard before, so that game of Carl's was good, and Carl's game was a good game. I miss Dragonlance, and I like to put my brain back where it was when I was 14 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very good. The logistics were good. Everybody showed up. There was no like hoping a game would make or something. It's quite a good con for playing games. I'm really happy there.
Now, do you guys? So you said that one of your games was all Savage Worlds people, Carl. But do you think there was a lot of other? What would you say? Is this like? Was there more new people than you would say other years for both of you guys? Like new to Savage Worlds or new to games, or was it about the same kind of mix?
For me, it was about the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of a 60-40 split, kind of. Sort of. There were one of my games. We had two kids in it. Who were probably 13, 12, and we were all like worried about it. That was a Dragonlance game, and they picked up on the rules quickly, so they were brand new players. A couple of other games had brand new players in it who. What's nice is I didn't have anyone who was like new to gaming. All these people had played games before, and so they generally picked up stuff pretty quickly once you explain, target number 4, roll this die. They kind of got it, and so I did not have any completely new to games people. I've had that before in other conventions, like Gen Con. You get that because it's so big that you'll get people who've never played a game, but are there because they play card games or they like anime or they like cosplay. But they're playing a game, and so they don't know anything about gaming. So, but definitely not at Gamehole Con. It's very much gamers convention, right?
Okay, so Chris, what would you say if you just think of what's your major highlight, like just the thing that struck you out the most? What would that be?
Struck out the most about this year's Gamehole. So the thing that hit me most for this year's was more about me personally. Is last time it was my first time last year, and it was on the I'm new here side, and I don't know anybody, and everything is new. And this year I was more like 1 year veteran, and I knew a ton of people there, so it was a different experience for me to like be visiting people I hadn't seen since last time, which are in the friend category. Though it feels like a year, it really doesn't feel like too long. Like it feels like I just did this a little bit ago, and it was really nice to go see them all. So for me, it was much more familiar territory, and it was like a thing that I would definitely want to keep doing.
Okay, cool. Was there any games that you played that you just really liked, or kind of stood out? I
only played in one game that was Carl's game because I had 3 that I signed up for, but on Friday morning I don't know why, jet lag or something. I was so tired I didn't leave the hotel room until 5 p.m. and I just canceled all my games. So I probably would have played more, but for some reason I was just so tired.
Yeah.
All right.
I played in one.
Carl?
I played in one. It was a Savage Worlds game. It was like at the last minute, I found out that I had saved a 4-hour slot for doing other things, and it was Friday night, and I went, you know what, I'll just play a game. And so I signed up for a Savage Worlds game, and I took a back seat as okay, I'm just here to kind of roll some dice. And so I picked these were Marines, special forces people going in to try to discover what's going on with an alien. They didn't know that that this was an alien thing, but they were trying to discover what was going on in the outback of Australia. And so I was the heavy gunner. So I just sat back and just waited for myself to fire the heavy gun and let other people take the lead. But oh my God, we got so bogged down. There was probably 5 scenes to this game, and we got bogged down in scene 1, and then in scene 2 we started shooting aliens, and that was the bad thing because the aliens were like super powerful, and so we like literally hardly got anywhere through it. We should have just like kept moving. But I just sat back and I was going, whatever, man, it's cool. I just want to shoot my gun, and I had a chance to shoot my gun, and that was all that mattered. So it was fun. It was interesting to it was interesting to find out what would have happened if we would have continued. But it was like it was fun anyway. We got to. There was some good role playing, even though we didn't really finish the adventure at all. So, but it was fun. It was fun.
Cool.
I forgot. I did play one other game. I put in a Carl Kiesler game. That's actually noteworthy. I've heard about all the prep work he does and his props and his table stuff, and I finally got to play in his Sidewinder recoiled. I think it was called Frontier Wild. It's kind of like Oregon Trail. And that was super cool. I finally got to do that, and he had such good archetype cards and miniatures, and they're all painted and everything looks so pretty. So definitely worth playing in a Carl Kiesler game if you can.
Well, was that its own thing, or was that like Savage Worlds, or what was that?
It's Savage Worlds. It's a so it's like he's like a Ace license for Savage Worlds. So it's Savage Worlds is a system, but it's like some kind of like a Old West, but it's not like Deadlands. It's more like realistic, historical Old West Oregon Trail type thing.
Got it. Okay, cool. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, and there was a couple of people.
So away from all the, go on.
I was just going to say there was a couple of people who had some really nice. It's always nice to see cool set pieces. So there was a few people like somebody had a pirate ship. So there was a lot of interesting setup. I don't do that. I tend to run more theater of the mind kind of things with just a map that people have in their hands that they can look at and walk through. And it's cool to see people who do that.
A lot of luggage, and we talked about that in the first episode of this. You're often constrained by your transportation needs, but anyways, so let's move on from all the good parts. Was there not a negative necessarily, but like what was a big tribulation that you had, or what was like a big letdown, or what was like something that happened to you that sucked, Carl?
Well, I went to 2 seminars because again I had some time, and so I decided to go to seminars. One was name just went right out of mind, but the one who the individual who wrote "Slaying the Dragon," I listened to his podcast. I can't believe that his name's escaping me, but he did a cool job talking about how bad the culture in Wizard of the Coast is for the D&D team. So that was interesting.
Oh yeah.
But it was kind of a bummer, to hear all the infighting. And then the other one I saw Ed Greenwood, and it was supposed to be on long running campaigns and how to do world building but it turned into a commercial. It turned into a commercial for his book. Basically. And it was like, okay. It was like, oh, well, you could do that. But you know what? We have a book where we do all those details, so you don't have to do those details.
Oh.
And then, our Kickstarter, every month you get a thing that does these details. So you don't have to figure out what the mead is called in your bar. We'll figure that out for you. You just focus on which is fine. It's cool. I mean, I'm not saying the product's bad, but I was there to hear.
No, but it was
it
seems like it was like a bait and switch. You're saying, right? Like you thought it was going to be a seminar, like they were going to talk about things of how you can maybe constructively come up with these reasons, and that was basically just about the book, or you don't have to think, just buy the product kind of thing.
Yeah. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. I actually left that one 10 minutes earlier so that I could get to the Savage Worlds folks had a little get together in the room where all the games were being played, and so I said, I'll leave 10 minutes early and go to that instead.
Okay.
So that was a bummer.
Chris, do you have any big tribulation or just something that dragged you down, or
mostly my own overscheduling? Like I said, running 4 different games of 4 different sets of props, 4 different things is probably more than one needs to do. I should run 2 games twice, and I would have had way more time and less baggage and stuff like that.
There you go. Live and learn. On that note, so I mean, did you enjoy the sponsored keg night? I think this was I didn't even know there was a sponsored keg night. So
I missed it myself.
Chris, did you? I went to it.
I knew it was. Yeah, I knew it was happening, but I don't know. Okay. Maybe I was running a game or something then, and then I went later, and everybody had already dispersed. I think.
Well, they had sponsored events for most of the nights, but I went to the Wednesday one. There was like a Wednesday welcome party that had free booze. And so that was kind of interesting. It was really weird because it was kind of, a lot of people standing around not talking to each other. to begin with, or sitting at tables. And so I just
like a dance where everybody's dancing in the middle and you guys
it was kind of weird. It was kind of weird. And so I got my free
that's
booze.
how they are. It's like, it's like the introvert. It's like, this hobby has lots of introverts. So you need certain well-placed extroverts to kind of manage it all and make it happen. If they aren't there, everybody's waiting for that person.
But I guess the alcohol was supposed to be there to grease those wheels, but it's just wasn't
I got my
enough,
beer. I took my beer and I found a table where people were sitting, and I just sat down by them and I went, "Hey, what do you play? And here's what I play." And then I ended up meeting a guy who did a ton of Foundry programming. He was like all about Foundry scripting and stuff. And so we had just a grand old time talking about, what do you script? What do you script? And what do you script? So that was a good time. Cool. And so we pull people were walking by and would say, "Hey, come sit down. What do you get? What game do you play? And what are you doing here?" And so kind of forced to, have some interaction, which was kind of fun. So, but I left that early too, because it was kind of, okay, I'll have another drink. Oh, look at that line. I guess I won't have another drink. So,
okay. Here's another question. I think I already know the answer, but at the same time, was it fun enough to want to go again?
Yeah.
Yes, for me.
Yes.
It's my favorite.
There we go. Okay. Double yes.
It's close for me. So it's just driving out there. So it's for me, it's great. Next time I'll stay closer though. My hotel was 8-minute drive from the convention center or 10-minute drive. And so that kind of was a bummer. Okay. I think I'll try to stay in one of the hotels so that, these events or like hanging out with people, it's going to be easier to do. I wanted the points.
And I forgot, Chris, you didn't drive, right? You flew.
I flew. Yeah. My hotel was far too, which sucked because, I had to get different, I had to keep that in my mind all the time for logistic purposes. But yeah, definitely staying in short walking distance is best.
Cool. Okay, so did you guys any inspiration for your future games that you got from this, Chris? Like, there's anything that kind of you experience or learn there?
Well, number one, Carl Kiesler's game had, like I said, has lots of cool props and lots of things, and so there's definitely ideas I took from that about what I could provide and what makes it maybe easier to explain or gets people kind of on the right page mentally faster, so that there's more game time. I did like Carl's game. I liked revisiting old settings and old ideas, so I might do something similar to that.
Cool.
Maybe not Dragonlance, but something where I can kind of pay it forward to other generations to go through some of the stories that I thought were cool.
Nice. What about you, Carl?
I've decided I'm going to completely redesign. And is this just another bug hunt? The way that those guys played and the things they did, and then I had to improvise things on the fly.
Yeah. And
I was just like, oh, this would be so much better if I did it this other way, that they kind of pushed me in that direction. Because, the conceit is you're trying to figure out what happened to this colony, and it seems like everything's normal, but it's not normal. And they figured out it's not normal right away. And so they spent a lot of their time trying to prove their hypothesis so that they could take some action. And it's like, I should lean into that, not try to keep it a mystery. But why not?
Okay.
Let them figure it out. And then the whole point is the second, move the second act up as opposed to holding that in reserve. So I think it'd be kind of, so I took that away. I love the props, but I'm just looking and I go, I feel so insecure in the fact that I don't use a lot of props or anything. And it's like, well, I'd like to. I mean, I drive there. Why can't I do more props? Oh, that takes work, and I don't have time to do that. So,
I mean, you know what? But like, props are the icing, right? Like, the cake needs to be good. So for you, if it takes away focus from doing these interesting games, that's the most important part, always, right? Props enhance; they're not the whole game. So I think don't feel bad. Don't feel bad about it is what I'm saying. So here's one from me. I want to hear about that sweet swag, Carl. What did you get? I know you had bought something. So what did you get? What was super sweet?
So I finally bought dice for the Alien game. So the Alien role playing game from. Oh my God! It just went out of my head. I'm losing my mind.
Yeah, me too.
On the back shelf, I could turn around, but then I'd be away from the microphone. So, but for the Alien game, I finally broke down and bought some dice for it, so that in a future convention, I could run it and have dice to actually use.
Are you talking about the Free League game?
Free League. Thank you very much. Yes. See, we got them around here for a reason. And then I broke down into that, and then I was talking to James from the Smith dinner table, the Knights of the Smith dinner table. He he's involved with Arkenforge, and so we had a nice chat on the dealer hall. He showed me some cool stuff about it. They had a huge deal going on. I think I spent $50, and the all the different assets alone. Forget the program that you put the assets together, but the assets alone were worth about that much. So I was like, okay, sure, why not? I'll buy it, and so I bought that, and then I won something too. Kind of the trifecta. I won the 5th edition Spelljammer box set, because the Game Masters, they had a drawing for Game Masters, and there was a table of stuff, and I went through that table with a fine tooth comb. I was like, nah. Okay, this is like the only thing that I can even I know Spelljammer doesn't get a lot of love, but there was a lot of stuff that I was like, no way, I wouldn't take this off this table, leave that. And so so I got that, I should give it away to somebody as a present, but so I did get a free box set.
The best 5e book. Nobody would say that.
Says no one.
But by the way, what is Arkenforge exactly?
Oh, it's it's got 2 pieces to it. It's a map building software. So with assets, so you can build buildings and maps and stuff like that. So it's map mapping software, and then it's got a second side of it, which is if you play at the table with a monitor, it's set up so that you can play things. It'll do Fog of War. It'll do certain things like that for playing at the table. It's
like an in-person VTT.
Yeah, in-person VTT.
Yeah.
So it's got some different. I got it because of the map making. I was like, okay, I don't have Incarnate or anything like that. So what the heck? I'll see if these assets make it easy to make a map, and and just to support them anyway. Since I was there and it was a good deal, and I said, what the heck?
Sure.
Why not?
All right, Chris, what did you pick up? Anything cool?
So the only thing I bought was this little stuffed animal cat for my daughter. Her name is Mista, or his name is Mista. That is for this Pine Box Entertainment game 7th Sea, which is a pretty cool card game if you ever have a chance. But I did win that same GM thing twice, which I didn't know you could do, but and it was cool. I've never won that before, so I got this Cthulhu Duels game or something, which I haven't opened yet. I thought it's a 2-person card game of some kind. And then I did it again, and I mostly tried to find the smallest thing because I have no idea how I'm going to pack all this stuff and bring it back. As I was already full of room because I ran 4 different games. So a very cool thing that they do. It's nice to get stuff. I'll probably re-gift one of the things. But we've talked about it before, is that dealer hall there is quite small. It's not too small. I mean, it has like 4, maybe 5 aisles. With lots of different people there, but it's very quick to go through. So my problem is that I go to too many conventions, so I have everything. I only have to something here that I haven't seen yet, which may or may not happen.
Yeah. So on that note, is there any kind of new products that you saw that you didn't buy but that looked really interesting?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, there was a cool. I don't know if you've seen them before. There's like for Magic the Gathering, they have those play mats that have where you can put different card areas, and they're all kind of drawn out, so you know exactly where. Somebody had some of those that had like quick start rules for the actual game, whatever the RPG game was. I thought that might be pretty cool. Like maybe let's just say it's Savage Worlds. That tells you all the actions you can do, the different things you can, how wounds work or whatever. That would be kind of cool to have right on a play mat. So that was the coolest thing I saw there that I hadn't seen before.
Carl, what about you? Any products that you saw that looked really interesting?
I saw something for you, but the guys who make the 2D20 system, they had a Fallout book. They had a book on Fallout RPG.
Yeah, the new Fallout RPG.
And I was reading it, and I was going through it, and the pictures were nice. The layout was clean. It looked.
Yeah, they had really good art.
Had a cool feeling, so I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. And then I was this close, to buying the Alien hardcover to go along. I've got the PDF. And so it's like, I bought the dice. Should I buy the hardcover? But I already got the PDF.
It's not in your bookshelf. You got to have it in your bookshelf.
No, I'm not going to do it. So I didn't end up buying the Alien hardcover. But
you're still thinking about it, right? You went to bed and it was in your I'm
still thinking.
There's a space right in your bookshelf that you can see where it should go, right?
Yeah. Well, I've got their Mutant Zero or Mutant Year Zero, so I've got that hardcover. So it'd be like, I need the Alien hardcover because I'm more likely to play that than I am going to play Mutant Zero. So,
yeah.
All the Free League books look super nice.
They're pretty.
Very good at it.
Oh, cool. All right, I think that most of them. So just, I guess, any closing thoughts or anything else you wanted to kind of talk about, Carl, as far as the con went?
Well, I think the big thing is I don't think people realize who haven't gone to a con, Eric, how much fun they can be if you're around your people, right? Everybody is supportive. There's very rarely is there. It happens though. Don't get me wrong, but most of the games I play in, there's not toxicity. People are supportive. They're if somebody doesn't know the rules, they're walking. People are helping them walk through the rules as opposed to this guy's just bothering me that he doesn't know what he's doing. So it's a fun experience, and like Chris said, you get a chance to meet people. I'm really bad at names, so it's terrible. I only know people by faces. So the next time I see them at a convention, I'll be going like, "Hey, how's it going? I don't know your name because I've forgotten it, but I saw you last year and you played in one of my games, and let's play again." So, I think convention. We have to get you to a convention at some point. It just has to happen, my friend.
I know, it has to happen. What about you, Chris?
I really like Gamehole Con. I think it's one of the good ones. I recommend people try out their local conventions first, just to kind of get a feel for conventions. But if you have to go out of state and you're finding, if you're debating on which one to pick, I think Gamehole Con is probably, if you're a tabletop RPG player, Gamehole Con is probably the best one, and I think you'll be able to play the most games there, and it has a very, very good feel.
And unlike Gen Con, you can go to the food trucks and get your food in like 25 minutes. Gen Con, it's 3 hours to get food from the food trucks. So
here's another question I just thought of. How were the food trucks? Like, what was the selection like? Like, what do they have a big selection of different stuff? So was the food good?
Last year, I remember there being 2 food trucks, and this time I think there were like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
I only ate for 2 of them. And they were both good, the ones I had.
Well, like people with like dietary restrictions or vegetarians, things like that. Do you think there was like a big enough selection around for that, or?
Yeah, there definitely was. There was Thai food. There were people who were selling fresh greens. Then there was the classic. There was a taco truck, and so. Of course. So I thought there was a pretty good variety of stuff for different tastes. Obviously not everything, but there was like the classic. There was the guy selling the cheese sandwich, the grilled cheese sandwich truck. So I mean, there was for anybody who's got. I need to eat something simple. There was that. Something who had it's like, hey, I need to stay away from meat. There was something like that, and for people who love tacos or burritos, and the prices were pretty good overall. So for what you got, at least the ones that I went to, you got plenty of food for the money. It wasn't a ripoff or anything like that. So that was nice, and it was right outside the convention center. So literally 5-minute walk. You were there.
Get back into the action.
Yep. And like I said, at a convention of 75,000 at Gen Con, it's go out, wait an hour till you get served, and then try to figure out where you're going to sit because there's another 1,000 people. So it's definitely. Oh, okay. I love Gen Con, but there's something definitely different about a mid-size convention than you get at like the monsters out there. Just a different feel. So if you go on a Gen Con, you go, hey, it's just too many people. A Gamehole Con would be awesome for you, right? So, anyway.
All right.
That's
all I got.
All right. Well, awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. We hope you got something out of it. Reminder to drop by masteringtherpg.com to learn about all the stuff we do and the projects we've got going on. Please email, like John did, gamemaster@masteringtherpg.com if you have questions, need some advice, would like Eric to adjudicate some differences of opinion, which we always got there. We've got one that was almost like an adjudication, almost. So, hey, give us a positive review wherever you get your fine podcasts. We'd love to keep doing the show, and that's always a positive thing if we get a good review. So once again, this is Carl with Eric and Chris. Say goodbye, guys.
Happy gaming.
Yeah, come to the table.